Tell me.
I hear you.
Is it you?
Is it you? Hey, I hear you.
Now, what does God call us to do? What is our purpose on earth? It's to occupy, right? We're to occupy until He comes. Not sit in our chair in our pew and wait for the rapture to come. It's to occupy. Occupy there, bringing the presence of God into our area, into our territories, into our cities. Because when you bring the presence of God in, what that does, if you look back in the Old Testament, back in the days of Moses, nobody was allowed to go to Mount Sinai except for Moses, because they would die. I first read that and I thought, man, what a cruel God. I mean, you tell him not to cross this line, and he just burns them, just for crossing a line. Well, it wasn't God casting the judgment on the people because they didn't do what he said. It's because they came too close to his righteousness, and his righteousness burned up their iniquities. It wasn't God destroying them for being disobedient. It was God's righteousness consuming the iniquities that was in the people. So a lot of times people get on this kick about, oh, you guys are just demon hunters and there's a demon behind every door. Well, no, not really. If you just bring in the presence of God, yeah, God raises up people, specific people, to go out and to tear down certain principalities in an area because they're anointed to do that. If you bring in the presence of God into your area, into your territory, let God, Jesus already conquered the demons, Satan, death, sin, let them take care of it. So, just a little basis there to get everybody up to par. An example of that is we've been bringing in the presence of God, and in that time we've seen a psychic center go down. We've seen a psychic center be completely leveled. The foundation's not even there. We've seen 2 massage facilities that were fronts for prostitution operations that we didn't even know was there. I think it's hilarious that we're praying for specific targets, the strip clubs and the psychics and the porno joints. But God comes through and he deals with what is not seen by the eye. I think it's just really funny. I think it's awesome. And what was awesome is that both those prostitution joints had about $750,000 cash in them, and they gave all that money to the police department to help fight prostitution and drugs and crime in our city, which I think is wonderful. So by bringing in the presence of God, you can really start to change a city, your territory, your neighborhood. So now when you start to do that, things start to happen with you. You might start to get a little attacks, some twinges. You might start to see some things. God might start to take the veils off of your eyes, so you become sensitive in the spirit what's around you. A few months ago, I'll share this a little bit, what happened to me in my home. A few months ago, I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was soaking wet. I thought I'd peed myself, really, because I was wet. There's no other reason for it. Well, I looked beside my bed, and my cup is no longer where it used to be, and it no longer had water in it. It had moved, and it was empty. Well, we had thought that we had dealt with astral projection before in our home on another time, and that's what we thought this was as well. So that night, of course, it's 2 o'clock. I'm kind of, you kind of get a little upset and a little stressed out with what's going on. Something weird happens in your home, especially you get doused with water. But the next day, I talked to people down in Alabama who deal with this stuff. And after talking to the guy, he's like, well, you need to redeem your land, put the salt on. I'm like, guy, I've done that before. We've been living here for 6 years. We bought it off of a lesbian. And so we knew that there were spirits here. So we dealt with it. In 6 years, nothing has happened. But once we start to have our eyes open, start to gain authority and anointings and stuff, having impartations put into us, this stuff starts to happen. He says, well, it's probably not astral projection. It's probably the territorial spirit in the area, and he has a deep-rooted authority in the area. I said, really? Wow. So that was interesting. So then I started thinking. I started asking God a question. I said, well, it's interesting. If you're going to try to scare me, obviously I'm the head of the household. I should be the spiritual head for my family as well. If you're wanting to scare me, make me step back, my pregnant wife lays right beside me, and my 2 small children are in the room right next to me. Why not do something to them? That would probably scare me a little bit more than, just dousing me with water. Well, then the Lord led me to Job. It says that everybody says that the devil has been thrown out of the heaven and given authority to roam the earth, right? He's been given authority to roam the earth. He doesn't have the authority to possess the earth, but to roam it. After he roams the earth, he has to go before the throne of God and accuse the brethren, doesn't he? He has to say, hey, look at this guy, look at this Job guy. If I do this to him, I know he's going to fall away from you. So the only time that they do something, there's the authority that they have to have from God. So that's what God was showing me, that the presence of this territorial spirit that visited us only had authority and legal access to mess with me. It could only throw water on me. Because why not turn my TV on? Why not turn my lights on? Why not pick up an object and throw it at me? Why not do all those things? I had all these questions. But because God only gave that spirit that authority to do that one thing. And I thought, wow, that just kind of blew me away. I thought it was kind of awesome. So even though, a lot of people give the enemy a lot of clout, a lot of rebuff there, as long as you stay within the wings of what God is calling you to do, there are no needless casualties of war. We'll come against retaliation. We'll come against, things that are weird, not natural. But as long as we stay within the call of God and what God is calling us to do, we stay underneath that shelter, that covering, we're going to be all right. And when we step forward, what needs to happen is holding covenant. Holding covenant, backing each other's backs, holding covenant. The best thing to do after you go out on a mission from God and you go after something and you get results is don't talk to none of your friends for 3 days. Don't talk to them the next day, even after this meeting. None of us should even talk to each other tomorrow. Because what happens is the enemy comes up and goes, hey, man, your wife is stupid. And then you start thinking, man, my wife, she did do something stupid today. Why is she doing that? I start having all these bad thoughts. Well, I'm having these bad thoughts because she's under warfare. The enemy, the accuser of the brethren, is trying to get me to agree with him. It only takes two to agree so that he can go in front of God and say, hey, I've got agreeing with me about his wife. Boom, manifestation happens. Two in agreement. That's what happens. When you're getting words put in your ear about somebody else, it's not your thoughts, it's the thoughts from the enemy trying to get you to agree with them. Two in accord, that's what it talks about. So back to the holding covenant, it's like a roof. If you think of a roof shelters the things that are inside. And on the roof is shingles. And the shingles aren't just placed here and here and here and here. They're interlocked together, like this. They're interlocked together. When one of those shingles gets loose, you have a hole in your roof. You have a hole in your covering. That's why we always tell people if you're going out doing warfare, you're bringing in the presence of God somewhere to take down some principalities in some area or bringing forth the presence, don't talk to anybody for 2 or 3 days because you could hear what they say the wrong way. I mean, I've been married for 10 years. Some days I hear my wife right, some days I don't. Okay, she gave me a look. Most of the days I don't hear my wife right. Very little I do. But anyways, that's just unneeded abrasion. We need to stick together like shingles in a roof. It's not going to hurt anybody's feelings if you don't talk to somebody tomorrow. It's just becoming more discernment of what's coming in here and making sure it doesn't come out here at the person. You need to take it to the right thing. It's the enemy. It's wonderful being married to my wife because she has the same discernment. She called me up the other day. She's like, I'm pissed off and pray for me. That's all I'm saying. Because she knew she was mad at me for some reason, but it wasn't nothing that I'd done. So we were able to focus on what it was and what it wasn't. A lot of times we focus on the person in the flesh when it's a spirit speaking into our ear. We need to become aware of what it is that is trying to program us. Anyways, there's a lot of things going on. So what needs to happen? Well, the people of God need to step up and they need to take the authority that Christ gave them to possess and occupy the land. To bring in that presence of God that we just talked about, the presence that will consume the wickedness. Let God, His holiness, His righteousness, consume the iniquities of the land. Christ was already crucified to the cross, and He already overcame death. He already overcame sin. It's already done. They've just been given some time to roam around. I mean, when you're arrested for a crime, typically you go out on parole for, a week, 2 weeks, a month, or whatnot. You're free to roam around, do what you want, basically. Now, when everybody's on parole, do they all go back to their homes and sit? No, some of them run, some of them flee, some of them commit more crimes. It's just the same thing with the enemy, with Satan and all of his little followers. They're all out there doing the same thing. They've been put on parole, but they're not going to sit tight. They're not going to let us possess our land. We've got to step up and do that. There's the books out there that says, spiritual warfare isn't for this time. You don't need to do it. Jesus already done it. And that was for the times of the apostles. There's no more giftings and all that stuff. It's amazing how many people believe that. I just last night was talking to a friend of mine on the phone who is from the area of Cleveland. I'm telling him, hey, they're going to release 722 deities, demons, principalities in your hometown. And you're just sit by and wait for the rapture. Well, you guys are just always looking for somebody to, these demons and stuff. That the apostles never done that. By God, I don't understand why my church is talking about redeeming the land. I mean, what do you have to redeem the land for? I'm like, well, that's what the Old Testament done. That's when Joshua and Moses and all those the people of the Old Testament possessed new land. It was defiled by somebody. They had to redeem the land. That's the purpose for it all. Well, we live in the New Testament age today. I'm like, oh, buddy. I hope the rapture comes real quick for you, because we need frontline warriors. People still are in their old church mode, buying the books, watching the movies.